welcome back to our podcast as we read through the Bible in a year. At Trinity, we are walking through the Bible in a year and talking about what it means to read Scripture and have it be living and active from the verse in Hebrews. So hope you've been reading along with us. I'm Pastor Matt, and today I have joining us on the podcast Miss Rossi, also known as Allie Ross. Yes. Michael's wife. So, yes. Although nobody knows Michael, do they? They just know Rossi. So, it's Rossi's wife. So, welcome to the podcast. Today, we're going to be diving into the book of Esther. But before we do that, let's get to know Allie a little bit. So, Allie, Rossi told me you did a whole production around Esther in your dance studio. So, can you share what that was and what is Esther actually look like in a dance, and what is your production company? What is it you do there?
Yes, so I direct a dance company. It's called Evergreen Dance Company, and we are adult professional dancers that just all love Jesus, wanted to continue to dance, and we started 6 years ago just meeting and worshiping in dance studios and just kind of communing together, and then we started reading scripture together, and suddenly we were like, why don't we put the two together and create dance shows based around Bible stories? So now, every year, we produce a different Bible story, and Esther was our second one. Okay. So we started out with the story of Hosea and Gomer, and we've done Eve and other ones that I'm forgetting at this point now that we've been established for a little bit. But yeah, Esther was our second one, and it was so special. We are a cast of all female dancers, so it was a little tricky. We did have a Haman, the villain of our story, portrayed by a girl, but we also had our king was just a giant throne as more of a fixture, which we'll get into, of kind of how he was a little bit puppeted around throughout the story, the king. But yeah, so we just had him as like a fixture, and then we had Esther, of course, and Mordecai, which was super awesome. So
what's your Bible story you guys are doing this year?
This year is about the women from the Gospels. Okay. So we have stories like woman at the well, the woman who touches the hem of his robe, Mary and Martha. Yeah. So a lot of those New Testament stories. We're really excited.
And you are from Omaha, right?
I was born here. I'm from Orlando.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. You have, like, Disney ties.
I have Disney ties. Yeah. So,
but you were born in Omaha and have family still in Omaha?
Yes. So my aunt and uncle are from here. My mom is from here. She met my dad here, the Schenzel family. So that is my aunt and uncle, and all my cousins are still here. And, basically I got my job through connections in Omaha, and so once I was done with undergrad, I was like, okay. But the last time I was here I was 3, so we moved when I was 3. So I don't have any childhood memories here. Yeah. So now I get to start my own.
So when did you move back to Omaha?
This will be my 8th year, I think.
Okay, so you've been back for a while now.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. It's been a minute. Now I can. I'm almost ready to call it
call it home.
Yeah. Well, I think it's already home. It's already home. But Rossi is always saying that. I should say I'm from Omaha, but I disagree. Because I don't have childhood memories here.
Yeah. You were born here, though.
But I was born here. It's a debate in our family.
Well, we are going to be walking into Esther. With your background in Esther and having done the story, so we thought you'd be a good opportunity to bring you in and talk some Esther stuff with you. Yes. So the book of Esther, let's just give some background stuff to start. It's a book about the exile. And so what we've been walking through up to this point is God's people were a nation, and then they were the nation was destroyed. Jerusalem was burnt, and the people are sent into exile by Babylon. And so they're in the Babylonian Empire. But now, at this point in exile, Persia has taken control. So the Persians now rule over the Israelites, the Jewish people. And so that's where we get to the story of Esther. And so let's talk, who are the main characters, Allie, we find in the book of Esther?
Yes, so like you said, it's a Jewish community in Persia, And the main characters are Mordecai and Esther. And Mordecai is the cousin of Esther. He has guardianship over Esther. And then, of course, Esther herself. And then we have the cunning villain, which is Haman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Haman comes into a pretty big deal in the storyline, the villain.
Yes.
Esther is also another name for Esther is, I'm probably going to butcher it, Hadassah?
Hadassah.
Hadassah?
Or probably Hadassah. I have a student named Hadassah, which is the only way I'm very comfortable with it.
So that's her Jewish name.
Right.
Esther is what she goes by in Persia.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the Haman is a Persian official. Mordecai also works under the king as well. So King Xerxes, in most translations when we read it, is named King Ahasuerus. So if you see that, it's King Xerxes. We're going to go by King Xerxes because it's way easier to say.
Yes.
So we'll stick with that. King Xerxes. And he is married to Queen Vashti, and this is around 480 BC. So and the story of Esther, though, begins with this very elaborate banquet. And it's like this 6 months of feasting and celebration banquet, which I've never had a 6-month party. So... but that's what he throws.
Good. Yeah.
One of the themes that we also see in this is Xerxes is constantly drunk. So,
right.
So that plays into some of what happens here. So he basically the kind of how the story paints it is not very positive towards Xerxes, that he's probably been drunk for 6 months in this midst of this party. And so drunken Xerxes ends up demanding his wife, Queen Vashti, appear to the party and to show her off. Mm-hmm. She ends up refusing, and in a drunken rage, he basically kicks Vashti to the curb and says, "You are no longer my wife and queen," and banishes her in essence. And ends up doing a decree, which is a weird decree, saying all the wives need to understand that the husband is the master of their home. So it's this weird thing that happens in the midst of this. So, and what do we have after that with Vashti?
Yeah, so she's essentially dismissed as queen, and she refused to show off in front of all these drunken men. And the thought process was, if she can get away with disrespecting her husband, so can anyone else.
Yeah.
So
they were worried that this would be like an
example.
Waterfall effect
Yes.
of like, oh, now nobody's going to listen to us.
Yes. So, of course, after she's banished, they hold a beauty pageant to find the new queen.
Yes, and this beauty pageant is interesting in that they take young virgins. So the picture here is probably like 400, 500 young teenage girls, probably 13, 14, to find the queen. And this beauty pageant, they take a year to really kind of set this stage of creating, like they do a bunch of beauty treatments, but it also gives this conversation around that it's likely that they were being taught how to pleasure the king too. So it's kind of this gross picture being painted of 13, 14-year-olds preparing to be with this King Xerxes. So, so this is how the search, though, happens for this new queen. Interestingly, in the midst of all of this, Josephus, one of the Jewish historians, writes about how this would have looked. So there's some history so Josephus lived during Jesus' time, writes about what this would have looked like as well for King Xerxes, these 400 women, what they would have had to go through. So, and that's kind of where we get then to the introduction of Esther and Mordecai.
Right. So Esther hides her Jewish identity. She's one of these women that are going through all these beauty treatments that are potentially going to become queen, and she hides her Jewish identity. She poses as a Persian, and she ultimately ends up winning this pageant. Mordecai, her cousin, guardian, encouraged her to not reveal that she's Jewish, and the king becomes obsessed with her and elevates her to the new queen of Persia. So we kind of get this this beautiful diamond
Yeah.
throughout this whole pageantry, and she does end up getting chosen.
So she's the queen. And before we further the story along, who is Mordecai then?
So Mordecai is her cousin. I always thought of her as maybe her uncle because he's
feels
older.
uncle, yeah.
He's like an uncle relationship.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that
Like
he has history.
So yeah, Mordecai's interesting in that we talked about him last week in Ezra and Nehemiah.
Wild.
And it appears to be the same person.
Wow.
And so Mordecai in the story of Ezra goes back to rebuild Jerusalem's temple. So he's back with Zerubbabel. I butchered it again. He goes back to Jerusalem, rebuilds the temple, and then comes back to Persia, takes care of his cousin or niece or whoever Esther is in relation, and is her guardian. And this happens then after the rebuilding of the temple. So it's likely that this is happening in between the temple rebuild and when Ezra goes back to rebuild, or Ezra and Nehemiah go back to rebuild the walls potentially.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and he's a part of the royal. Is Mordecai have a role?
He's out at the gate a lot. And like it almost gives the picture. I don't know that it ever specifies what his role is, but it's clear that he is of a decently prominent position.
Yes.
Because he actually foils a plot against the king, and it sounds like it's a plot that the soldiers were plotting.
Yes.
And so which comes back fairly important later. So so who's this Haman guy then?
Yes. So Haman is he's the evil man, the villain of our story. He despised the Israelite people, and he just has a vendetta against the Jewish population. And so I sort of see him in a way, I don't know if this is accurate, as like the right-hand man of King Xerxes. He has a lot of pull with the king.
It does seem that way.
Yeah.
Like Xerxes gives power over, and like in his drunken stupor, it's kind of the picture of like, you take care of it. You take care of it. Let me know what I need to know, but I don't want to be involved in day to day.
Right.
And so Haman seems to do some of that stuff.
Right. And you were sharing that. Interesting that his lineage leading up to Haman being who he was has a history of hatred
towards the Jews. Jews.
That is wild. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he's a descendant of Agag, the king of the Amalekites, who Saul did not kill, King Saul. And so there's this history of the thing that was the downfall of Saul in him not taking care of what God had told him to take care of, Agag, the king of the Amalekites. Haman is a descendant of him, and it appears in our story that we're going into that Mordecai's downfall and the Jewish downfall will because of Agag's descendant Haman. But then we have this full reversal that's going to, and much of Esther is about a reversal that takes place. So we're going to walk into that.
Yeah.
But Haman has a very dark heart towards Mordecai and the Jewish people. So Haman ends up being a royal official at the king's gate and telling all the people, hey, kneel down and honor me. And Mordecai refuses, which makes him super angry. He finds out he's a Jew, which means he hates him all the more.
Right.
And so he ends up plotting to kill all the Jewish people, and actually goes to King Xerxes and asks, hey, let's create a decree that gets rid of all of these people, all the Jewish people, which ends up, he says, we'll do this by lot, and that Hebrew word is Purim for lot, which means they're basically rolling the dice to pick a day for this to happen, which comes then to the feast of Purim, which is a Jewish holiday, because the reversal happens later.
Yeah.
So,
very
interesting. The Feast of Purim and how that plays out is all about Queen Esther. So
yes.
So the Haman plot. Let's continue in the storyline, the narrative. Then, so Queen Esther seems to be unaware of this plot by Haman. So what happens next?
Yes. So Queen Esther is not aware that he has now just made this new decree. She found out when her maids and eunuchs told her that Mordecai was in distress, so her cousin. Esther then sends a messenger to Mordecai to find out what's wrong. Mordecai then sends his cousin a copy of the edict and asks her to go into the king's presence to beg and plead for mercy for their people. And of course, the hardest part is that she can't appear before the king or she'll die.
Such a weird rule.
Yes. So you have to be summoned by the king. You cannot just appear in front of him. And at this point, Queen Esther and King Xerxes had not been in each other's company for about some time. So
yeah, it said like 30 days she hadn't been around him. So
yes.
Which means she hadn't been wanted by him or summoned by him, which means he's probably moved on to a different girl at this point. It's kind of the implications that it's saying. And so she's out of favor with him. So if she goes to him and appears, it's kind of like, well, what will he do to me? Will he want me in his presence, or will he cast me away? And by coming and entering in without being called, does he just say, away with you, death, or not? So
very high stakes.
Yeah. So he responds, this is Mordecai. He responds, do you think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews? For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise from the Jews from another place. And this is the famous part, the most well-known part. He says, but you and your father's house will perish, and who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. And that's kind of the big line that most people have of their knowledge of Esther is for such a time as this.
Yes.
So what does that mean? What is this all about?
Yeah, honestly, this moment really sticks out to me in terms, it was a very bold ask of Mordecai to say, hey, you have an in, and I'm asking you as your elder in your life, as your guardian, to be bold and to basically risk your life for this. And and knowing that she would probably be fearful, rightfully so, he is just encouraging her. It almost feels like he's speaking life into this moment, like this is your time. And instead of just giving into, oh, well, you might be risking your life and kind of casting a little bit of fear, I love that he just goes, and who knows if this is not the right time, like who knows what God will do. I think it's really encouraging. It's
an interesting deal because Mordecai is in essence saying perhaps everything that God is doing has been behind the scenes to place you into the role and space and position you are in, uniquely placed for this time and this place so that you can rescue your people.
It's amazing.
And at the same point, though, what he also says is, if you don't, God will still find a way.
Wow.
So he's so like saying, hey, God's going to do something, but he would desire to use you in this.
That's so good.
So that's kind of what's so loaded in that simple short phrase for such a time as this. So and then what is her response though in responding to for such a time as this? What does she say?
So she bravely agrees. She asks the Jews to fast for her for 3 days while she and her maids also fasted. And then she says, then I will go to the king, though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish.
Yes. Now,
Amazing.
did you know that this is Esther quoting someone else here? She is quoting a direct quote from Matt Rule's press conference. Did you know that? Coach Matt Rule. She was listening to the press conference.
Yep.
When he said, if we die, we die.
If we die, we die. If we die, we die.
So that
How
that
did
feels.
she know?
Yeah, she's just prepared. She knew in
so
advance.
Prepared.
It's like the Lincoln quote. That's like, you ever hear the Abraham Lincoln quote that gets used? Is it's don't believe everything you see on the internet.
Yes.
It's like that.
How did he know?
Abraham,
Just
thanks
ahead
for
of
that
his
wisdom. So if we die, we die.
Yes.
So that's what steps us in then to the rest of this story. So what's next?
So she does. She approaches the king, risking her life, but King Xerxes was pleased with her, is what it says, and held out to her the gold scepter, which was within his hand, a sign that he accepted her presence. And she invited Xerxes and Haman to a banquet that day. So she decides to hold a feast.
Which Haman's excited about. He's like,
sure.
I got invited to this special banquet. They must really want, they really want me involved. like, I'm going to probably be sitting at the king's side.
Yes.
This is great. So he's building this all up. So that night, though, Xerxes couldn't sleep. And so instead of counting sheep, he ends up having somebody read the record of his reign to him, which would be like, and then in this year, we sent this many things to this area. It'd be like super boring. But in the midst of it, this snooze fest of a reading, he's reminded of what Mordecai had done by foiling a plot against him. And so he's like, I should recognize Mordecai in some way. And so that's where we get to Haman the next day coming into the king. And so what happens next?
Yep. So all the while, Haman is plotting this whole time against Mordecai, sees him, and anger burns in him enough that he then builds gallows to kill Mordecai. So he's building structures, putting money into his execution.
And it's so interesting with Haman because he just runs across Mordecai in passing, and he's like, and then he can't stop thinking about how much he hates this guy.
Right.
He's like burning with hatred, and he goes home and he's like, oh, I just can't get this off my mind. I hate this man. What am I going to do? And everything else is clouded. And his wife's like, well, why don't you just kill him off? Build the gallows. And he's like, that's a good idea. So he builds gallows to kill Mordecai.
Yeah.
And he's going to go then the next day to Xerxes to say, hey, there's this guy. We need to kill him. Why don't you decree it? So Xerxes, though, has decided to honor Mordecai. But Haman's coming to have Mordecai killed. And Xerxes then asks Haman when he appears, hey, how should I treat a guy? What should I do to celebrate a person that I'm very delighted with? Now, Haman is like, oh, he's talking about me.
Naturally.
Xerxes wants to honor me. So he comes up with this elaborate, like, hey, you should have a parade, put your scepter in his hand, the robe on him, and celebrate him like as if it's a parade. And so here's where the story turns, because Haman is told then, okay, do that for Mordecai. And Haman's like, wait, what? I thought this was going to be a parade for me.
Right.
And now I have to go celebrate Mordecai.
Yes. So it's a big plot twist. Haman obeys the king. They parade Mordecai around, then goes to this banquet that Esther had planned. So we have so many plot points. We have Haman building his plot to execute Mordecai. We have Xerxes wanting to celebrate Mordecai. We have Esther preparing for her banquet. We have like so many events, but they are all intertwined and they're all so important. So they're now heading to the banquet.
And so Esther ends up revealing Haman's plot, and Xerxes is infuriated, ends up leaving the room. Haman, now exposed, pleads for his life to Esther, is like on the floor begging her. And then the king returns into the room, sees Haman, and assumes that Haman is assaulting the queen. And Haman is then sent to the gallows he built to be killed. And this is the big reversal that happens of what was meant to be Mordecai's death by Haman becomes Haman's death.
Yeah. And Esther requests that after Haman's death, a new decree be ordered that the Jews were allowed to protect themselves against their enemies, and they ended up defeating their enemies.
Because Haman's law that he had gotten passed is still in decree that anybody can go kill the Jews on this particular day. And so instead, he says, well, let's pass a law that says you can defend yourself. And so they end up being able to defend themselves and defeating their enemies. So that's the story. Like, what is the big takeaway then from the story of Esther? Like, because it's interesting, Esther does not mention God in the midst of this.
Yeah.
And yet, why is it in Scripture, and what is the thing that God is trying to tell us and reveal in our story here?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that God did, but one of the ones that sticks out most to me as we're talking here is just how what the enemy meant for evil, like God will turn around for his glory and intervene. And the whole concept of Haman building this death trap and then ending up being killed by it is just incredible. It feels like only God could make that happen.
Yeah, because God in this is the picture is God is behind the scenes maneuvering, working for his people's good and his glory. The other thing that stands out to me in this story is Haman's hatred. Like, this is working in the background constantly of Haman's hatred towards this group of people and to this person, and what that does to him. It consumes him. And so I think in a way for us is, have we ever been consumed in that same manner? Because it clouded everything for him, and it really propelled him towards his own devastation.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's really and what you said earlier, Mordecai kind of encouraging her, you're in this position, it's time for you. Like, God has placed you in this place and time to bring restitution for this the Jews. Yeah. It's so exciting that God would even want to use us. Like you said, he could make his plan come to fruition without us, but the fact that Esther was so confident in wanting to be used by God and risk her life to go before the king, I think as a believer and as a woman, it's just super exciting to have that example of how God is using us. So, yeah.
Well, that's Esther. Next week, we're going to be on the book of Daniel. Allie, thanks for joining us on the podcast today. One of the things I would encourage you to do in this week after having read Esther is go do a little bit of a look around on the Feast of Purim, because it's something that we don't celebrate as Christians, but is a celebration in the Jewish holidays. And it's it's kind of melodramatic, like they do a drama based off of Esther, and they hiss and boo at Haman, and it's just a really interesting thing. So if you want to do some background stuff, go look at the Feast of Purim. It's just an interesting thing to know some of the background of how that's celebrated now, and especially when you look at the book of Esther and how this reversal happens. So again, thanks for joining us, and we will see you back here next week for the book of Daniel. So have a great week. Let us know how you're doing, what you're reading, and what you're discovering in the readings. God bless.